Obviously, we don't have a lab fair this year, um, or this quarter, should I say. But we still thought that maybe giving you guys a CV workshop could help relax a little bit. We know that the research is a little stressful right now. And that's actually my first slide, is that it is very hard to get into research right now.
Oh, wait,
The
Joey, I
whole
don't think
club
you're
tried.
you're sharing your slides. Sorry, I can't see them personally. I don't know.
Oh, of course I'm not.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm terrible with technology.
No, no problem.
Anyway,
Done that before.
now do you see it?
Yep.
Okay, great. So distance research, again, it's just kind of hard for everyone right now. It's difficult for students to be emailing labs. It's difficult for PIs. It's difficult for professors. 2020 is bizarre. It's weird. We don't know what's happening. I also have a cousin here who is an internal medicine resident, and she has been reassuring all the pre-meds in my family that grad schools and medical schools, they're not going to hold this year against you if you can't get into research or if you're paused your research. It's not something that's in your control, so no one's going to blame you for it. Don't stress out about it. We'll fix it all eventually, okay? Oh, come here. There we go. CVs and resumes. Does anyone want to take a shot at the difference between the two?
A CV is basically just explaining or like slightly explaining the things on your resume, like with 1 or 2 sentences.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So one of the big differentiations between the CV and the resume is their length. So resumes are short. They should be about 2 pages long. Going over that, kind of looked down upon. However, for CVs, they go on forever. Like there are professors out there who have 50, 60-page CVs. It just goes. Another difference that I sort of think of is that the CV is really covering more your academic achievements or your academic ability, while your resume is focusing on specific goals or a specific job posting. So in a CV, you're aiming to kind of get across your critical thinking skills, your academic ability, whereas a resume, you're kind of going more towards like specific skills. You know, it might be people skills, customer service. It could be, you know, some buzzwords. That's why resumes have a lot of buzzwords in them. Other things about the CV, generally you exclude jobs, which obviously is a huge thing on a resume. The only jobs that you could really put down on the CV were things that are related more towards your academics. You know, for example, if you were, I guess, a paid intern, if any of you are lucky enough to have that, that would be something that you could include on a resume or on a CV. Languages go under skills. This is kind of a small thing, and you're trying to cover all professional skills possible. That just goes to saying, you know, if you want to put down that you know how to use a microscope, if you know how to do PCR, those are skills that you would put on your CV, not necessarily on your resume though, because that's kind of weird. Let me think. Yes, so for in a CV, you can include hyperlinks if you have publications or presentations. Resumes, you generally wouldn't do that. Another thing which I find interesting is that a CV is much more likely to be read by a real person. Resumes, especially when you get to larger corporations or organizations, they often use computers to scan through. That's why it looks for the buzzwords, where on a CV, since it's so long and can include some kind of specific things about, you know, maybe a particular aspect of research, they're going to be read more often by a real person. The do's and don'ts. I'm going to elaborate on these. There are far more. Don't list anything from high school. This obviously doesn't apply to freshmen. It's your first quarter in college. You don't really have any other experiences. If you are, you know, second, third year, and you have something important about your high school achievements, maybe you had an internship, you had, a shadowing program. Those are things that you could include as well. Don't lose focus. Stay concentrated on, the intellectual side. This kind of just goes back to don't put things like people skills and customer service, whatever. Do include monetary awards. That should go for, like on a resume, you may not want to say how much money you want, but on a CV, brag about it, go for it. Should also include the title of it, what it was for, list everything that shows leadership and responsibility. So tutoring, if you were, I know that the ChemFrat does tutoring, that's something you could include. Positions within clubs. I believe you could put down LA as well if you're in LA. And just be professional about all of this. Again, CV, it's going to professors, it's going to PIs. You want to make sure that you seem like a good candidate. An example of a bad candidate is this guy. Would anyone want to point out the huge do nots that this person made? Yes, Anish, she said good afternoon. He didn't actually. So not a trick question. The real strange thing that this person did is they did not have a professional email name. So this is a real email. I was there when it came into my part-time job. It's a job application. Please do not be this person. I hope I don't have to tell any of you that you need a professional email, but no one's going to look at kind of a joke email name and say, oh, this is a great candidate, we should give them a check. Some other things going on in this email, it's not a good email. You have no opening and no closing. Those are both polite. You don't want to suck up too much to the people that you're emailing, but you should, be courteous about it. The body of it is also bad. We have no capitalization, we have no punctuation. And when you are giving someone a CV, which goes more towards your academic standpoint, you want to show that you understand English very well. You can write well. If they needed you to publish something, you might be able to help with that. That's not what this guy did. Layout. So the CV is pretty boring in terms of layout. Google has a lot of templates you can use for this. I would say to keep it simple, but if you do want to go a little more creative with it, we have some guidelines here. Just don't make your font too tiny. Also choose a font that's not a joke. Like if you write in Comic Sans, it's not going to reflect very well on you. Your goal is to make it easily readable. This includes using jargon for, scientific jargon. You don't want it to be inaccessible to someone who's not particularly advanced in that certain field. You don't really know who's going to be reading these, especially when you get into things like grad schools or further publication. Don't make it overly dense or complicated. I don't think I can say anything about that. There is not one necessarily correct way to make a CV. I will say, though, that sort of the trend in using CVs and resumes with the 2-column style or the sidebar style might give you a little bit more problems, especially with resumes. I know I'm mostly focusing on CVs here, but for resumes, if you do have one of those fancier formats, and resumes are often read by computers, it can actually not read it correctly. So it might miss some of your qualifications, or it just might not be able to flag the qualifications that they want, which could end up in you not getting that position. So just keep that in mind. Uh, sorry, I have a propensity to lose my voice. Contact information, just put your name at the top, put down a phone number, an email. You don't need to put down a physical address, especially now when you probably shouldn't be going to other people's houses. Education is, this is listed at the top of the CV, which is in contrast to a resume where you would actually put your education at the end. Include your majors, include your minors. It's not necessary to include your GPA, but if it's a good GPA, you definitely want to show it off. Experience, yes. So research, teaching, and outreach. These are very broad categories. It's not the only kinds of experiences you can have. It could be volunteering, it could be tutoring, mentorship sometimes. So any of my mentors out there, you guys can actually put down NUS. And you should include with these sort of what you did, why you did it, any skills that you picked up there. For instance, if you're talking about a specific lab that you were in, you would want to put down the name of the lab, what you do there, and anything you picked up. So if you picked up chromatography, put that down. You should also include in any of your listings, and this goes for anything on this checklist, should include the name of it, and you should include the time period where you were involved in that. Down to the month is recommended. If you can't remember, it's probably not such a big deal, but if you can, it definitely shows that you're on your game, you know when you were doing these things. Awards and honors. So this can be academic awards if you won, I don't know, employee of the month. I would say don't put that, but if you really need something in here, it's not the end of the world. Not everyone's going to have awards and honors, and that's fine. Publications and presentations. So these are going to be anything that you presented in person, anything that you wrote, anything that you helped present, or even if you were behind the scenes, you can put that down because you were involved in it. And if you were paying attention, you should know enough to give your own presentation. So you can definitely put down stuff like that. You can also put down publications if they are in review. If you're trying to get into research, you probably don't have that exact experience. Professional development. This could be things that aren't required of students. For example, if you speak at your high school sometimes, that could be professional development. If you work with Afton, maybe, you could put that down as professional development. Professional societies. This includes NUS, any other special ones. This would also go towards any positions that you hold. If you are on an executive board, you can put that down here. Skills, these are any research techniques that you know, any microscopy, if you know how to do gel electrophoresis, this is skills that you could put down. Also, languages are included in this section, and the language is its own category on a resume, but in the CV, it is just one of your skills. Okay, so now we're going to look at some examples. Although, before we get into this, does anyone have a question yet? Okay, so this is a little bit of a dated CV, and it's also specifically from finance resources. So if it makes a reference to finances, that's where it comes from. So again, we have the name, the phone number, the email address. Physical address isn't that important anymore. No one's going to be showing up at your door. Obviously, we have education at the top. You can include the city and state for any of your items, but it's not super important. For something like UCLA, though, you would want to put down city, Los Angeles. This is someone who has graduated, so they can put down bachelor's. You can put down Bachelor's of Sciences in progress, or just put down your major and list your minor behind it. The expected graduation date is kind of important. Again, GPA isn't necessary, but do put it down if it's something good. Honors, I don't think anyone has that until they're graduating, but if you do, brag about it. Relevant coursework. So when we're talking about research labs, your relevant coursework is really going to be more like the life sciences, the neuroscience core, if you take any chemistry, biologies, but you don't want to include things like GEs because it's not relevant. I know some people put down their grades in the relevant coursework. You don't need to do that. Also because the relevant coursework section can get very lengthy and it's not.
Oh no. Wait, can you? What happened?
So that's the fire alarm. It's gone now. Nothing's wrong. It's my sister
Yeah,
cooking.
a little guest appearance. I like it.
Yeah. Relevant coursework. Again, you can put down anything you think is relevant, but do be a little succinct with it. For example, if you're a transfer, though, you might want to kind of include a description of that class. If you do think it's relevant, if you don't think it's super important, you can leave it off. I would also list in the education section your previous university, just to give sort of a idea of where you're coming from. The work and leadership experience. This, again, is like a finance sort of example. So you're not going to have something like project one or a selected client transaction. You should put down your leadership experience. If you do have any work in the STEM field, you can put that down if you like, if you find it to be relevant. So you should always include the company name. You should always include your position title. And again, like I said, the start and end date to about the month. City and state aren't super important. You can put down the school if it's a school that you were working with. You can put down the company if it's a company you were working with. Each listing on your CV should include, again, what it was, why you did it, anything that you picked up there. This is just my example. And the student club name, this would probably be if you hold a position in the club, because it is leadership experience. If you want to add something that you think you contributed a lot to that club, or I guess you feel like you should be recognized for the work that you did, you can put that down here as well, as long as you elaborate on what that was. Skills, activities, and interests. Interests, I wouldn't include it. Activities, student club, volunteer work, independent activities. These are things to show, I guess, that you're a little more well-rounded. Technical skills, sorry, I'm skipping all over this, but technical skills, programming languages, don't put MS Office and Excel. I would say that still applies to everyone. For this section, you could also put down your lab skills, anything that you picked up. Again, microscopes, PCR, whatever. Languages, fluent and conversational proficiency are kind of the terms that you can use. You can also put down, for X years that I have taken this language, or I have spoken this language. Here we have a second example. Technically, I have 4 examples to show, but I'm going to go through them very quickly because they're kind of long, and I just want to give you an idea of what actual students at UCLA put down on their CVs. So, and we have name, education, awards and recognition. See, here is an award. It's not an award for anything STEM related, but it is a monetary award, so you should put that down. Leadership. These are all students' goals, so that's something you put down. We have the bullets explaining what it was. We have the months and the years. Lab-related experience. So we have what the lab was, and then all of these sort of skills that she picked up at that lab. Languages, certifications. If you do have any lab certifications, or this is CPR, but if you had any, like working with animals, working with people certifications, you put that down here. Another example, this one with a slightly different format. We have the relevant coursework. Like I said, we have the life sciences, chemistry, mind over matter, education. Here we have the specialized skills written at the top, which isn't all that common. It's not going to get you any points deducted, but it is something to consider. Honors and awards. This is just a listing with the month of the year. Leadership experience. These are mostly student clubs. You do have the one server entry, which I wouldn't include, but also not that terrible if you can explain it. Community service. This would be volunteering, extracurricular activities. Again, if you think it's particularly relevant or you feel like you should be recognized for the work that you do, put it down. Another example, this one kind of goes back to the first format with the bars. Neuroscience Journal Club. So you can put down Journal Club as research because you are reading research papers, and that is still a rewarding experience. Work experience, tutoring, I would say, is probably relevant work. I wouldn't say that BeautyCon is, but if you explain it right, it can be. Volunteering activities. This is a continuation of volunteering, relevant skills, and then awards. For example, going back to the first format. In this example, you actually have research labs here. So you can see kind of the format of here is the lab, here is the department, here is the professor or PI, and this is what I did. So this is very good example of putting that down. This person also has a publication, and you can see that one name is bolded in the publication, and that is to show that this is you in that publication. We have more research experience, and then skills at the bottom. Honors and research fellowships. This is a really good CV. This is my favorite example. The presentations. You can put UCLA Poster Day. I forgot to mention that earlier. It's a little less formal than a presentation, or how should I say this? It's a little bit of a step into research presentation, but it's still a really good experience. Service, again. Okay, the cover letter. So some people do want to put a cover letter. Other people do simply an email. You should only do one. If you don't want to include a full email of why you're a good candidate for this position or why they should let you into their lab, and then have a whole page in an attachment saying the exact same thing. So this is a statement of purpose, who you are, why you want to work in their lab, and it's a good idea to demonstrate that you've looked into their research. There's a couple examples here where you can see that they incorporated some things that they learned from reading research papers coming from that Professor PI. You do want to mention things like your year, your major, what you're interested in, and sort of what led you to this lab. In the email, be direct. Again, it could be a lot more wordy if you're not going for the attached cover letter, but should always have good email etiquette as well. So here's an example. Again, in the first paragraph, you have the statement of, fifth year, the double major. These are the things that I'm interested in. In the second paragraph, you have, I've looked at some of your research. I've really thought about it. Here's what I learned from it and why I think it's interesting and why why I want to work with it. This paragraph is a little non-standard, just because not in that you include a third paragraph, you absolutely can, but more in terms of explaining I'm the fifth year, I'll still be here. You can definitely include, your goals. You can include your certifications if you find them to be particularly relevant. If you're applying to a lab that works with rats and you have the rat work certification, that's something you can include. And here's another one. At the top, you should probably address who the email is going to, saying just dear whoever it may concern is not, it doesn't reflect very well on you. It doesn't look like you spent a lot of time getting to know this research or that you really know who you're emailing. So in the top paragraph, we have sort of an introduction. In the middle paragraph, you have, talking about their research. Again, this is not to suck up to them, but more to demonstrate that you have thought about the research. You've seen some of their research and you've internalized it. This last paragraph is more of a statement of goals. Just thanking them for their time is always polite. This is another example of an email letter. I don't have any examples of a cover letter, strangely, but so the email format is a little bit more popular, I think, just because it kind of lays everything out for the reader in that email. They're not looking through it and just saying, here's someone who wants to apply to our lab, but now let's click on the attachment and see why. Sort of just puts it all there right in front. You can do the cover letters, definitely, if you feel strongly about that, go for it. But it is very much up to you. Oh, yes. The length of these can be a little bit different. So if we go back to this one, you see that this is probably like half a page maybe in terms of an email. But when you come over here, cover letters tend to be a bit longer, go up to a page. You shouldn't go over a page. It might be a little much, but yeah, that's what you do. So asking for help is a big part of making sure you have a really good CV or resume or cover email, cover letter. Definitely read a bunch of examples. If you signed in, I can email these slides out if anyone would like to look over those examples. Ask your friends to read it over. That goes for your CV and also your email. remember, you want to look professional. You want to look like you have great grammar. You have a great explanation of everything on your CV. You can also find more resources on the Undergraduate Writing Center. And tomorrow night, we're going to be doing some peer reviewing. This is the meeting ID. That is tomorrow at 7. And if you feel like you need extra help, you can always reach out to anyone at NUS. I'd definitely be willing to. I'd be willing to bet most of the board would be willing to help you out with a reread if you need it. All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Also, the meeting link is in the email that we sent out this week if you guys weren't able to screenshot.
I had a question. So when like the PI says like or they ask for like a CV/resume, does that mean you send both or like one?
I would send just one. Sometimes students only have a resume and we don't want to exclude them. So PI say, CV or resume. It's just, I guess, the opinion of the mentorship program going back directors that the CV is more of a better example. That resumes, they're shorter, they have a lot of buzzwords, they might include things that aren't relevant. So the CV just tends to be more preferable, I guess. But you can have a resume if that's all you have.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, if not, I'll hand it back to David for any closing remarks.